Ladies and Gentile men, I am Larry, this is Super Overwatch, and we are back to talk about another problem with this game. Now look, I love Overwatch, and the reason I talk about these problems is because I want to see them fixed, and I want this game to be the best it can possibly be. So today we are talking about my good homeboy Hanzo, and the fundamental problems with how he is broken, and how in his current state he is absolutely useless to use in this game. Now let's look at the reasons why he's a broken character, and it's all about the fundamental aspects of his kit. So looking at Hanzo's primary fire, it is an absolutely useless arrow. You fire this thing, it's a little limp noodle with a really weird arc on it. It doesn't do a ton of damage. You can fire it as fast as you can possibly pull the trigger, which is great, but it's hard to be consistent with Hanzo. Hanzo has a huge inconsistency problem, and it's because to do any amount of damage with Hanzo at all, you have to be kind of close to the enemy, medium to close range, you have to be firing off arrow after arrow after arrow after arrow, and you have to be making every single shot. But because much like a semi-automatic rifle, Hanzo has this bow, and it's really cool that we have our semi-auto character in a old school bow-wielding bow man. It's really awesome. I love it. The flavor of it's great, but the execution is awful. Because if you have a normal semi-automatic rifle, it's going to shoot in a straight line. Bullets in Overwatch shoot in straight lines, except for Hanzo. For some reason, his little arrow has this weird dip to it. Dip, dip, dip. I don't know why they would choose to make this decision, but it makes the bow nigh impossible to use. And this is something that can be immensely cleaned up. We could have him work like somebody closer to McCree. Bam, bam, bam. You pull the gun straight into his heart, straight into his head. Wherever you land it with the McCree, you can line up the shot and you know where that shot's gonna go. With Hanzo, if we can have this projectile fly a little bit straighter and a little bit farther and a little bit faster, maybe we can see a Hanzo that could be more accurate and more predictable and honestly better to use. And these, I do like maybe that the idea of this inconsistency is seen in the rest of Hanzo's kit. If you look at his left bumper and right bumper abilities, he has a scatter shot arrow on the left bumper in which you use it and it sets up this arrow. He goes, simple geometry, and the arrows just go flying everywhere. And I mean, it's kind of crazy that they call this simple geometry because this looks pretty complex to me. I don't know how to shoot an arrow that scatters off into 5 or 6 or 7 shots, and honestly, I don't know how you make this thing kind of have all the shots go into one person. It's going to be very much about luck. You're going to fire the arrow, you're going to hope it lands close to them, and you're going to hope that most of the arrows scatter right into their skull. The only thing that helps with this is Hanzo's other ability, which is the Dragon Recon. He can fire this arrow, it has a homing beacon on it, it works like a tiny Widowmaker ult, and it helps him to find other people on the battlefield. And by other people, I mean his enemies. He knows where his teammates are, you know that's normally how you work. But he can find his enemies through walls. It's a little mini wall hack, it's great, and it kind of helps him maybe line up these shots, maybe go in for surprise sneak attacks, and try to find ways in which he can use his low damage output and his totally useless bow, and maybe finally get some kills. Now, the only sort of real range that Hanzo has is in his ultimate, the Dragon Strike. And it's really funny for me to say consistent range because this thing is inconsistent as possible. It is a giant double dragon. It is a dragon that goes through everybody, and it's so loud, and it's so huge, and it's so slow, and it's very easy for your enemies to dodge. And I don't know why they would do this. We have so many fast ultimates. You have McCree's High Noon, bam, 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 those shots are right in there. You have Soldier 76 with his active super target hacking, and all of those guns, all those little tiny bullets, straight into their face. Think about Reaper. Reaper goes in with that Death Blossom, bam, 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 die, 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 all around him, shotgun shells everywhere. And Hanzo honestly does not have consistency with this Dragon Strike because it is too predictable. But Hanzo's problem isn't just in his kit, it's in the disadvantage that he has when you're playing alongside a Genji. Now, Hanzo and Genji in the lore are brothers, and Genji was so problematic that Hanzo had to have him killed. And allegedly, Genji went through this, whole rebirth, and he hung out with Zenyatta, and he became one with himself, and he became a whole better person, but nobody's gonna believe that. Hanzo does not believe for a second that Genji is a changed man, and Hanzo, if he could kill Genji, would, but they're on the same team, and therefore there's no friendly fire, and Hanzo physically cannot kill Genji. So what Hanzo has to do, what you have to do as a Hanzo character when you're playing as Hanzo and there's a Genji on your team, is you have to follow Genji around. And you have to make sure that Genji's not getting up to any good. He's running around, he's breaking things, he's spray painting everywhere, and you have to go and you have to clean up his mess. He's gonna put a disgraceful Genji face up on the side of a wall. You're gonna have to put a Hanzo face right there in front of it so that people aren't offended by the ugly Genji and they are just satisfied in the fact that you have this beautiful Hanzo face up on the wall instead. You can't really stop him even from breaking walls and breaking things and breaking objects in the environment. You just have to sit there like an upset father and watch him do these things and just be like, Genji, please stop, don't do it. But you can't stop him. What do? Do you focus on fighting the enemy team, or do you follow Genji around as closely as you can? And it's a kind of game that you have to play where you're splitting your brain, trying to figure out how to do any sort of damage with this character, and then also do damage control on your brother. Cappy and the boys need to fix this, and there's a few things they can do. They can make the bow more consistent, they can make the bow more straight and more fly straight, true arrows flying everywhere and making sure that they get into people's skulls, and they can maybe have a lore retcon where Hanzo and Genji are no longer brothers, so that you're not responsible for Genji's actions in the game, and you don't have to spend so much time babysitting him. I don't know how quickly these changes can be implemented. I don't know how you have a lore retcon. I'm not exactly sure how to go about that. We haven't had one so far. Maybe you just put out a comic where you show Hanzo's parents and Genji's parents, and you show that Genji's parents were really not Hanzo's parents. They have two separate set of parents, and that Genji was just sort of like hanging out with the Shimada clan. He's, just hanging out like a cousin, like a cousin, like Nico, my cousin. That's not a good example because Nico and Roman were legitimately cousins. But when you say cousin, but you don't mean cousin, kind of like that. That he was the cool guy, they were friends, they were really close, the families were close, but they weren't actually blood related. And then we can finally have a Hanzo that doesn't have to be so attached to Genji all the time. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully Cappy and the boys will find this video and make these changes. And the only way they can is by spreading the word. If there's anything else you want me to talk about, any knowledge you want me to pass from me to you on this game, let me know in the comments below. I love to talk about this game all the time. I love Overwatch. It's great. Mwah, mwah, fantastic. Until then, just, hey, have a great day, and bye-bye. This outro music's coming right you straight from Japan. Is hanging out with Hanzo and he's hanging with a lamb. He's not hanging with Genji, his big bad brother. He would never do that. They don't have the same mother. They've retconned the lore. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a song that tells you that these guys are not brothers anymore, and that's what we got. Who knows what's in store? We have Overwatch. Play the game. Do the stuff. Subscribe, yo.